Welcome to Shark Cap Table Pro. Keep a bigger bite of equity. We're going to discuss Section 3. I've added some more power in the form of loans, new loans, and we're just going to go click on this and go down and see Section 3. Now, I have been in Table 6, and I have zeroed out the data. So we're going to pretend that we can solve our problems with debt. It will not happen, but I want to show you how it could happen. So let's first off, I want to scroll up here a little bit, and I'm going to zero our debt, and I'm going to put the terms in months. So here is a brand new fresh. We see a lot of pink. Pink is not your friend, it's a problem. So we don't have any beginning cash, and we got a negative 289. So we got to do something about that. And the best way to do that in this example is to use debt. Now, we're going to start in month 1. By the way, the debt always starts in the first month of every year. And we have 7 years. And if you don't remember the months up here, I've got them for you. So we're going to scroll down so we can see everything. Now, let me show you another thing that happens. When you actuate or spin this to go from low, mid to high, the turquoise will show whether you're in the low, mid, or the high revenue projections. And what we're doing is we're placing loans into those projections. And you can't put a low revenue loan into a high revenue. It has to be done on the line where I highlight it as turquoise. So I'll just show you that. Here we go to mid, takes a couple seconds, be patient. There, see, now we've moved it down to the second line, and that's where we would put a mid-revenue loan if we needed it, and it actually turns out we don't because there's loads and loads of profit because I've loaded it with royalties. So the last one is, of course, the high revenue, and again, here it is. You can see that's where we would put it. So I'm going to come back because I know we got some pink in the low revenue. And we're going to solve that with loans. Now, this green line here has to do with the debt to equity ratio. And when it's green, that's a great ratio. If it's yellow, it's good. And if you're 50 or over, you're headed for trouble. So let's take a loan in beginning month. Let's take a 3-month. No, let's take a 4-year. A 4-year. And you know, I'm looking at how much money we need here. We need to crank up and watch what happens here. See, we've borrowed $250,000. We're still not out of the pink. So there's an example where we have at least solved the first year with a loan. Remember, it's not going to happen with a loan, but we have a tremendously terrible debt to equity. This is an instruction to you. But we still haven't solved these problems. So let's go borrow some more money and see what happens. It's taking a little while to calculate. There we go. So it's going to take a while to burn this out. We've got to borrow a lot of money. And don't forget, money costs you something while you're keeping it. You've got to pay back the principal and the interest. So cash is going out to feed the banking monster. So in order to get through this thing, at least for the second couple of years, you got to borrow $1.6 million. This is like crazy. So let's see how much we have to borrow to get out of here. And I can tell you, it's hardly happening because as we add this up, we're not earning enough money, and we're just going from bad to worse to terrible. So borrowing is not the answer. It can be a short-term answer, but not an entirety. Have to have some equity somehow, some way. So we're going to go in and we're going to put a little equity in and alleviate some of the problems. We're going to come right back. So we're going to go to 6. Now I'm going to go to this year, the first year, which is the founder year, and I'm going to crank up and put $300,000 in. Now we can see up here that that's enough to get us through the first year. This is just a repeat of what we have above. So let's go back to 3 so we can play the loan game. Okay, I'm going to move our loans up here so we can actually see them. Now we got some problems here, and maybe we could solve it with a loan. Let's reduce the 36. Maybe we can get by because there's only 3 years of this. And we're not in this period, so we have to start in the next period. So now we're ready to go, and it's a 10% interest. Let's lower that to about 8%. There we go, 8% interest. And let's dial in some loan and see what we get. We know we're going to have about $250,000, but notice what happens. You see now we have only borrowed 50. That's pretty good debt to equity, but it hasn't solved the problem. So keep on cranking. Ooh, with 150, we're already in the red. That tells us we're highly leveraged. We're going to need some more equity, and that's why you don't do loans early on, because you don't have enough equity. But I'm going to solve the problem so you can see what happens. There, we have to borrow $400,000, and if we just don't even breathe, we get at the end of the year with $206,000 in the bank. That's not enough. Let's borrow another $50,000, and we end up with $30,000. Because don't forget, you've got to pay your principal and interest. There's no moratoriums in these loans. Well, we only have one loan tranche for a low revenue, and it's the same for the mid and the high. So we've run out of ability, but let's crank up a little further and see if we can solve this problem. It looks like we wouldn't have to borrow very much more before we get through. All right, so it looks like we need to borrow $800,000 in month 13 in order to get through and have some cash in the bank at all times. It's a lot of money, and look here, it says you're never going to be able to do it because your debt to equity is just crazy. Nobody will loan you money with a debt to equity ratio like that. However, now you know how to use this, and we also have a nice video which talks about this. It's what we're actually making right now. And don't forget that we also have existing loans. That's when you set the company up, and maybe it's an existing company that has some loans, and that'll tell you where to do it. Basically, you're doing it in the tab, which is green, which is at the bottom of the page. You can't see it, but it's an Excel tab called Loans. So, just to review, Section 3 is where you see how much of a liquidity problem you have. You're going to solve it almost always through the sale of equity, either common or preferred or a convertible note, which is a short-term debt that gets turned into equity in the next round. Or maybe you could sell some royalties. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. But today we wanted to talk about this tool and how you can solve the liquidity problems with a combination of equity and debt. Thank you very much.